We are in denial that we have a problem. We're angry at the suggestion that autism is a problem that needs a solution. There's it! It's that word again! Solution! Woo! And we are in this mental bargaining stage to convince ourselves that we have no problem. No, I'm not against vaccines. I've had all my vaccines. My kids have had all their vaccines, COVID included. So I'm the most vaccinated anti-vaxxer you'll ever meet. He's just advocating for genuine informed consent. And I think that that's who in their right mind would have a problem with that. People that just want us to blindly trust the system. Well, we see what's happening, and then COVID opened people's eyes to how the sausage is made, so to speak, and now people are trusting the system less. Because I want to contribute to helping society heal from this, which means accepting where we're at, no longer denying that we have a problem, and moving into a better future for our kids. We're just with the kids these days, Zach. Kids are on their phone all the time.
Kids are on their phone. Should we start with a few dad jokes?
I love dad jokes.
I mean, it's only fitting, right?
Yeah, go for it.
What did the fish say when he ran into the wall?
What did the fence say when he ran into the wall?
No, fish.
The fish. Oh, damn!
You got it. What do you call a sleeping bull?
Sleeping bull. This one I don't know. Ground beef?
A bulldozer.
Dad joke.
Okay, what do you call a bear with no teeth?
I don't know that one.
A gummy bear. You know.
We've got a few here. We've got my mate Imran Asi. He's a Lebanese fella here in Tasmania. Hillary from the Highwater. Hi, Hillary. We got our boy Tommy from Spectrum and Camouflage. We've got
we got Liv. What up, Liv?
Hey, Liv. Hey, Ann. Good to see y'all.
There we go. Okay. Should we just get rolling here?
Yeah, let's do it, I reckon.
So is there a way for us to see questions? Oh, there's a little question box. Okay.
Yeah, I can see comments on mine, so hi, Hillary.
All right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in, and we'll try and answer them.
Yeah, chuck them in.
Chuck them in.
What time is it where you are, Zach?
It is 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. It is 10 a.m. Sunday morning here in Australia. I'm from the future.
You are in the future because it is Saturday here.
Yeah, and it is cold in Tasmania. Don't know if you can see my breath, but she's chilly in the office.
It's about 75 and sunny here in Southern California. But
sunny with a high of 75. Can't beat that.
It doesn't ever change. It's the same every day.
All right. Hillary wants to know what the topic is. Zach, get into it. What are we talking about?
We are talking about autism, the autism label, misconceptions around autism.
No.
Question, is autism genetic? Lived experience of autism, a dad's experience, a teacher's experience, and we'll see how far we get into the weeds.
Yeah, fair. Sounds good.
I think it's fitting to just ask the simple question from your perspective, a lived experience. What is autism?
What is autism? Jeez, that's a big question. Well, through my research and lived experience and diving deep on the subject, I would say autism, according to the DSM-5, is a category of neurological order. And I think part of the confusion that comes in with that is people use the term autism as a catch-all to describe their unique set of comorbidities that exist within this category of autism. Um, for us, it was acquired autism. This is a term that you'll probably hear coming up more and more. My son wasn't born this way, he became this way. So that just flies in the face of the argument that autism is genetic. And on a practical note, autism is it's very tough. We see autism as a superpower. People love to represent that. We love to proliferate those stories because they make us feel good about the mystery of the human experience. But for so many, autism is not a superpower. It's a debilitating disability that traps someone inside their own mind. And this is the spectrum of experience. That may not be you, but it is for many.
Yeah, interesting. I was at counseling with my children, and in the counseling office, there was the DSM-5. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, let me see that thing. So I was flipping through and I found autism, and it has the three categories. And it doesn't really give you an accurate picture of what autism is,
Mm.
as you know. I didn't see any mention of 24/7 care for life.
Yeah.
I didn't see any mention of you'll be taking care of your child for life. It seems as if the DSM-5 is kind of the problem of the misconceptions around autism and how society views autism, because it's painted as a picture, like you said, as a superpower. And there's reveal parties. Um, but, what was it, 2024 RFK gave an address, and he was talking about autism and how they're going to start researching it.
Yeah.
And he said things like, these individuals will never pay taxes. They're going to be, helped in the bathroom the rest of their life. And the community just went berserk. And I listened to it and I was hearing it, and everything he said is every experience that I lived in the classroom teaching profound autism. So I sat there and I was like, oh, finally somebody's talking about and painting a real picture of what these families go through. And it was just interesting because the other side of the spectrum took a lot of offense to it. Did you catch that press conference?
Oh, did I catch that press conference? That press conference ignited a um that press conference is the reason I wrote a book. It's the reason I started speaking up about advocacy, because that press conference for me, like, it was the reality that we face that you never hear talked about. And I then saw the media backlash, the media manufactured outrage, the sound bites that they put out there just to paint RFK as Hitler that wants to euthanize our children. And I thought, surely those that are in the space, the advocates that that I'd followed for years, I thought surely they'll stand up for him and say, no, 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 he's just seeking solutions for, no, not a final solution, bad term. He's seeking knowledge of causation so that we might lessen this burden on future generations. And I cried. I felt seen for the first time by a public here for the first time in my life, a political figure openly talking about identifying causation. And then I saw the media backlash, and I just could not handle how people just went along with the narrative that they wanted to spin. And that's why I decided I have to speak up. I can't stop. I can't trust these people to represent my views anymore. It's funny you bring that up because I just filmed a reel on this Senate hearing that's just happened in the last couple days, where this Representative McBath from Georgia is, well, it's a dog and pony show. These Senate hearings, they get to grill RFK, they get their little soundbite, and she asked him to apologize for those remarks that he made. And then when he begins to try to explain, she shuts him down, reclaims her time, says, I'm reclaiming my time. No, you're not allowed to answer the question. No, you're not allowed to explain. And he brilliantly, when he did finally get the chance to speak, he brilliantly said, I was talking about those most profoundly affected. And this is clear from the context of the press conference. And she demanded an apology from her constituents about, she said, will you apologize to these families that are affected by autism who just don't understand? And with that statement, she highlighted the problem. People just don't understand what autism is anymore because it's become so diluted and so sanitized. The spectrum's so broad that it's now a diagnosis in collapse, and it just doesn't mean anything anymore. And for him to stand up for kids like mine and say, no, I'm not apologizing for the reality that these kids face. Like, thank you, RFK. And I'm not an RFK Jr. apologist. I'm not a Trump apologist. We just want solutions for, oh, there's that word again. I shouldn't say solutions. We would like assistance with knowledge of causation so that we might pass on this information to future generations so that they may have less struggles than we have.
Yeah, and for any dad, like with kids, of course you want to lessen the suffer and burden on your kids. Why do you think previous administrations never talked about it? Why were parents like you gaslit and silenced and
Well,
not
my
heard?
opinion, and this is largely the topic of my book, is because society's having a grief response to autism. We are in denial that we have a problem. We're angry at the suggestion that autism is a problem that needs a solution. There's a solution. Whew. And we are in this mental bargaining stage to convince ourselves that we have no problem. And the reason it's not brought up is because there's no easy answers. And we don't know because we're not because we're not willing to look honestly at causal factors. And until we're actually ready to dig deep in it, there's no conversation to be had. The numbers will just continue to go up. And you could get into the conspiracy theories and tinfoil hat of to honestly look at causal factors seriously, to believe these parents that their children acquired autism. The reality of what that would mean is too difficult to face. We don't want to believe that reality, so we push against it in order to comfort ourselves that we live in a society that has our best interests at heart. And unfortunately, I just don't believe that's the reality we live in.
No, no. And that's largely so when I was teaching profound autism my first year, we were about to have our first child. And I remember like a month into the class, into the school year, I was looking around and I'm like, you know, I should probably look into, what's going on here because it seemed like at the time, and that was in 2020, the numbers just kept getting more and more.
Mm.
And again, I taught profound autism. So my classes were getting bigger and bigger and kids were transferring in. And my wife was on the holistic side of things, and she would mention to me like we should really start looking into vaccines. And so I started studying vaccines, and I found Dell and the High Wire, and
Dale.
I binge watched every single thing he put out. And for me, it was kind of like it made sense. It made logical sense to me. Like when you have Dr. Tony Ebel, Experience Miracles podcast talks about the perfect storm. You have birth trauma, birth interventions, antibiotics, environmental factors, and then you load the system with toxins, your body has a response, and then that's why we see so many families with the same exact story
Yeah.
of their kids regressing into autism. And I think if that were to ever really be pursued, which it is now, right? RFK's definitely done work with a vaccine schedule. But think of the backlash and the lawsuits and the payments going out of if that was actually proven, which we kind of know it is, that vaccines are a factor in autism.
Yeah.
Not a sole
And
factor, but
no,
a
that's right.
factor.
So it's the total load theory. I'm actually reading a book at the minute called The Total Load Theory, and the idea is that a truck drives across the bridge and the bridge collapses. Well, what was the fault? Was it the weight of the truck? Was it the structure of the bridge? Was it the engineering process? Was it the cable suspending the bridge? Is it one of those things, or is it all of them together? And it's the total load theory that no, it's not just vaccines. It's the toxic soup that we live in. But as Dr. Peter McCullough and the McCullough Foundation, have put out, they synthesized the studies of, I think it was over 300 studies, and are coming to that conclusion that the vaccination schedule is the easiest modifiable factor in the multifactorial conditions that bring about autism. So, and it's not, and I hate this term anti-vax. Like, it's not that we're anti-vaxxers. I'm just telling the story of what happened to us, and I hear resonated around the world that's happened to other people. And you just have to be willing to look honestly at it. And people just aren't.
Right. And honestly, on my podcast, I was trying to stay away from these conversations,
Hmm.
not because I didn't want to talk about it, but I, I wanted a space that felt like I could have anybody on. But every family I had on had the same story, which I kind of thought that would happen, and then it's just same story over and over and over again, and it kind of forced my hand on like, what, we're going there.
Yeah.
Um, and then you
Well,
have,
it's
yeah.
a shame. It's a shame that you've been invited to do your own research and actually dig deep. And that's that's what all we're asking people to do is to do your own research. Pick up a book. Like, I've just finished Vaccines Amen from
Yeah.
Aaron Siri, and he's a trial lawyer. He's the one who sues the federal government on behalf of the Informed Consent Action Network to get the data that we used, that was relied upon to license the childhood vaccine schedule. And this book just systematically pulls apart every single vaccine on the childhood schedule, that none of it has been done to the gold standard, which would be a randomized, double blind, placebo controlled trial. Not one vaccine on the schedule has undergone that. And that's a reality that people just don't want to live in. But you know, he would get labeled, I would get labeled an anti-vaxxer, but he also makes the great point. If you would like automobiles to be safer, are you anti-car? Like, we get these strange dichotomies that if you want something to be safe, that you're against it. No, I'm not against vaccines. I've had all my vaccines. My kids have had all their vaccines, COVID included. So I'm the most vaccinated anti-vaxxer you'll ever meet.
That's a, that's a funny statement. Yeah, Vaccine Amen by Aaron Siri. I'm almost done with it. I was reading it before bed for a while, and that wasn't probably the best idea because then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. But I had the opportunity to go to the Inconvenient Study in Malibu,
Mm,
the showing of it, and I've heard Dell speak a couple times. And whenever he speaks, he has the audience stand up for anybody who's been
yeah.
affected by vaccines. And literally, most of the room stands up. A super, super powerful moment. And then I got the chance to talk to him after, and I told him, I was like, hey, you have everybody stand up that's been negatively affected by vaccines. Have you ever had anybody stand up who hasn't been negatively affected by vaccines because of the work you're doing? And he said, no. I was like, I'm that guy.
Mm,
Thank you for everything you put out because I I don't have that story, and it's
yeah.
because of the work of the high wire and all that. So that's that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. I only just discovered Dell and the Highwire late last year. And I've come to find out and that's just a testament to how that voice is suppressed. It's very difficult to get these platforms. And I think that they would have been stifled and they would have been silenced along the way. And I think they've had to rebuild their profiles time and time again after getting shut down through COVID. But they've been going 10 years. And I like Dell Bigtree. God, he's my hero. I want to be Dell when I grow up. One day I'd love to meet him and just give him a big hug. I'm just so grateful for the work that he's doing. And again, he's not ever telling you what to do. He's just advocating for genuine informed consent. And I think that that's who in their right mind would have a problem with that. People that just want us to blindly trust the system. Well, we see what's happening, and then COVID opened people's eyes to how the sausage is made, so to speak, and now people are trusting the system less. And it's scary, but that's part of the grief process that we
Mm,
go, okay, now I have this information. What am I going to do with it?
right, right. Yeah, we got a good question that came in
Yeah.
about the grief.
Ah,
It's
yeah.
how can parents shift from what's wrong to how does my child experience the world?
Mm. Yeah. Well, my story personally is that I spent the first 7 years of my son Lyric's life trying to fix him, trying to get him healed. And that was part of our unique experience, with the upbringing we had, the worldview we had. I just knew that the only reason this could happen was so that I could bring my son through to healing and experience a typical life or have the fullness of life. And that you can't live in that space for forever. That's part of our grief journey was I had to come through to acceptance and to begin that exact process of I just want to be a dad that loves his son, and it is what it is. There might be nothing I can do about this now, but how do I maximize the quality of life that he has? And it's troubling. It's not fun, and it's not quick. And everyone's seasons of grief will be different. There's no manual for it. You've got the 5 stages, but you circle back, you repeat, you skip some, and then you start the whole process over again. And I think that it is important, particularly among dads. Like we are problem solvers, and we want to ignore the fact. Well, we're presented with a problem that we can't solve,
Hmm.
and it's very difficult to engage with that. So a lot of dads check out because, to be honest, like my son needs a nurturer. He needs a carer. He didn't need a mentor and a role model because he just at present doesn't have the mental capacity to be doing the things that I would be doing with my 18-year-old son now. Um, and so I retreated into work. I just wanted to feel good at something. So I just kept up with my music, kept up with making money, and just I thought, well, whatever the future holds, we're going to need more money, so I'll just make as much of it as I possibly can. And it was a refusal to engage with my inadequacy as a dad that I had a problem that I couldn't solve. And so it takes time to recalibrate your brain to just accept that it is what it is and focus on quality of life and seeing the world through their eyes. And that is an unfolding journey that never ends. And it's grateful to have, these spellers, which we only learned about spelling 4 or 5 months ago. And it's due to people on the internet recommending I look into it. And you're seeing into these people's minds who are there, who are competent, who are actually quite intelligent, but through the brain body disconnect with apraxia, their motor skills just don't allow them to speak. But teaching them to spell on a spelling board and then type, you're finding this profound intelligence that absolutely your child is in there. And then again, you have to hold the hope loosely of like, oh, well, I need to teach my son to do this. And what if he can't? What if he's the one that it doesn't work for? What do I do then? And that's a tension you have to live in, and that's part of our grief process as well. Like you've tried everything and nothing has seemed to work. So how do I keep going? It's not a life that's an easy one, that's for sure.
When did the shift happen for you?
Um, we're laying it out all here on the Zach Ponder Unspecial Pod. I'm gonna get deep with you here. The shift happened for me. I grew up in a very religious community, and it was God's job to make me healthy, wealthy, and blessed. I grew up in what's called the prosperity gospel, which is basically Jesus wrapped in capitalism. So it sells pretty good. Uh, Miracles for everyone. And I bought that hook, line, and sinker. And so I went to the bottom of the barrel of that journey, fasted, prayed, sought every spiritual solution for my son that was on offer, and it culminated in a trip to California to this church that was renowned for seeing all these miracles. And we got there, and the message we were receiving from these spiritual giants was that whatever's going on with your son has nothing to do with you, and you need to learn to be at peace. And I'm just like, hang on, I can't accept that. I need to know who's responsible. I pulled a Karen. I'm like, I need to talk to the manager. And I'd lived in angst for years, and it was destroying me as a person. And I would call it, looking back, I'd call it spiritual abuse. It's no one's fault, but that was the culture I was raised in that taught me I was a master of the universe, and I could pull the levers of control to produce an outcome. That God was this galactic Coke machine, and all I had to do was get the right sequence of buttons, and out would pop my miracle. And it never happened. And the reality of accepting the fullness of my son's diagnosis, that's when I began to to change the way I viewed it. And
Yeah.
but it's not about, so then you're stuck with this reality, and then you go, okay, well, do I just unplug and live the rest of my life? But hang on, my daughters are going to have kids at some stage, and we're no closer to solving this problem. So then as a dad, your energy refocuses on, okay, my life is what it is, but what about my girls? Who's fighting for them? Who's putting information out there that would be of benefit to them, and how can I support those efforts? And that's why I began getting more vocal as an advocate.
Well, yeah. What? That's super interesting. Why do you think dads are missing from the conversation? I posted something a while back. I was playing catch with my son, and you commented, and you're like, "That hit me hard because all I want to do is play catch with my son." And I read that, and I was like, "Holy smokes, man! How much things I take for granted for just the simple thing of playing catch with my son." And
Yeah.
it made me start to think like, dads are somewhat missing from the conversation. Um, I know as a as a dude, like we don't obviously like to go on blast with our emotions and our feelings,
Yeah.
and it's primarily a mom community.
Speak for yourself. I'm crying over here.
But then also on the podcast, I heard a story of mom and dad. They were in the grocery or in the store shopping, and the mom said to the dad, let's get some walkie talkies so that we can have them at home. And then the dad was like, no, 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 we're not going to do that. And then they got to the car, and he just full on broke down, and he was like, I'm never going to be able to talk to my son
Yeah.
through that walkie talkie.
Yeah.
And that hit me hard too, because even the other day I counted how many times my 4-year-old said dad, and it
Yeah.
was in the hundreds. And
Yeah.
then in the evening, I'm like, man, who am I? Like, a lot of the community doesn't ever even hear the word dad.
Yeah.
Like, and you mentioned it before, it's easier for dad to check out and just go make money and do the, providing kind of thing. But you're vocal about it, and there's not many of you dads. How could there be more dads in the conversation? Or
It's a great question, ladies. I don't know. Um, I think kids need a dad, where possible, and just back to that throwing the baseball in the yard with your child. Like, It's this random generic scene that every time I see it in a movie, it's that reality that hits me, and it's like 1,000 tiny cuts. That'll never be me. It wasn't yesterday. It's not today. I've tried it. It doesn't work. And it's not that I desire to throw a ball in the yard with my son. It's that it represents the ease of building a connection,
Mm.
and that's something that's void from our lives. Um, my wife she's a learning support aide, and she sees this common that she's like a she's like a and the autism whisperer. She knows who's on the spectrum, who's not. 'Cause she's been doing it for 7, 8 years, and the process of going through getting a diagnosis. And moms are the ones that are usually leading that because they're seeing the daily ins and outs, and the dads just generally want to push against it, and they don't want their kid to be labeled because they want them to not be constrained. But that's just denial. And inviting It's very tricky to invite a dad into that, but I think the only way we can do it is to just be open and honest like this, and just share that dads aren't alone. And I mean, I get a lot of comments on
Hmm.
the socials, and I always try to respond to the dads when they reach out, because um, it can feel very lonely. And I'm not saying I've got all the answers, and in fact, it's not a very good sales marketing tactic. Like, hey, follow me. Let's go through the stages of grief together. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't sell. But when you put, and I think it's a reframing. Again, this could be considered grief, but to say, okay, this is the problem. What do we do about it? How do we make the world a better place? And what can I do? And for me, it's been to highlight stories of families like ours and just help people realize they're not alone.
Yeah. What do you think for you, or and what you've heard, like what's the common reaction when you get that diagnosis?
For me, it was this was 2010 when we got ours, and my frame of reference for autism was Rain Man. So I just assumed that no matter how difficult it was, my child was a genius and would be recruited by the government to solve complex mathematical equations, and his superpower would reveal itself, and he would save the world in one way or the other. Like, that's grief. That's the story you begin telling yourself. Um, and I think the trick is with autism now, because it includes such a broad spectrum. I had a chat with a dad on a job site just last week, and he's like, "Oh, the school wants me to get diagnosis, but he doesn't need the diagnosis. He just needs a good slap on the head, and like just get off a screen and spend some time in the real world." And so there's this, I can discipline this out of them. And a lot of and the problem, and Liv from Praying Through Autism, she's brilliant at talking about this, but it's not, we diagnose autism based on behaviors. And what happens when you hand a generation of kids a smartphone and they're cracked out on screens?
Hmm.
You know, do they struggle to form meaningful connections outside of that screen? Yeah, probably. Is that autism? Well, we're diagnosing it based on behaviors, so in many of those cases it could be. But in a lot of those cases, it's probably not. It's probably just social awkwardness because society has changed. But then getting into the biological markers, when they say, "Oh, that's just autism," but when you dig deep and you realize, no, my son has incredible gut dysfunction. He's got health problems associated with autism. But then the autism crowd will say, "Oh, but that's not autism. That's something else."
Right.
So that's they want to draw these neat little lines around what autism is, and oftentimes it means that whatever we can celebrate, that's what we want autism to be, because we don't know how to solve it.
Yeah. Do you think the brainwashing started way back in 2010 before that, or Rain Man? Was there any movies out before Rain Man that?
My first encounter with autism was the movie Mercury Rising in 2008. Rain Man was 1986, which I would have been 3 when it came out, so I didn't see it until later in life. But again, Mercury Rising, starring Bruce Willis. Again, kid, genius, code breaker, and he was recruited by the government to solve problems.
Right.
So again, this was the frame of reference. But I never knew anyone autistic growing up. I
Hmm.
knew plenty of kids that fit the bill of Asperger's syndrome, which then changed in 2013. So they all got lumped into this category of neurological disorder. I've seen a question here. Hillary, she has asked, lately I've been pondering, are there cases of profound autism where the child regresses with such intensity in toddler years without vaccine injury? I wouldn't say no. I don't know. And
I'm
again,
aware of.
how do you prove it? This is the problem because we have no clinical trials to go off of. It's all just anecdotal evidence.
Right. I'm aware of one uh, that I had on the podcast. That her child regressed into autism and he was fully unvaccinated.
Yeah,
That's the only parent testimonial I've heard. And like you said, I haven't seen any evidence for it because it's not tested.
yeah. And this is the problem that people want to treat it one dimensionally, like, oh, it's Tylenol, it's C sections, it's this, it's that, it's that. No, it's the total load. And I'm sure that you can be autistic solely from genetics. Sure. But that's not the case for everyone. And, as Toby Rogers brilliantly points out, like up to 88% of cases are regressive or acquired autism. Like that suggests acute toxic exposure, not genetics. And yet, and again, Liv so brilliantly points this out, only 6% of clinical studies with autism include people who are profoundly affected. And I said that's like a detective spending 94% of his time investigating misdemeanors when 25% of the caseload is serious crimes. Like we're catering to the squeaky wheels, which are the ones who have a voice. So, children like mine, our stories get diluted out of the picture, and we only look at kids like mine 6% of the time. And hopefully, this is some of the changes that we can make. And I think, Zach, for me, like I've been doing this a year now, and to be honest, I don't ever want to come across as, oh, it's just another bitch fest about autism and whoa, poor Tyler, nobody talks about his kid. Like that's not what this is about.
Right.
This is about fixing the problem for future generations and advocating for change to the systems that are producing the results that we're getting. And the great news, the amazing things that are happening are things like the IACC, so the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee,
Yep.
that's been assembled in order to advise HHS on matters relating to autism. And it's a full spectrum, pardon the pun, of voices represented, including non-speakers. So
Hmm.
autistic adults who have the ability to spell are on this committee, and I love that. And
Yeah.
parents of those who've acquired autism are on the committee. So I don't ever want my advocacy just to be about woe is me, but to highlight and support the efforts of those who are making meaningful changes. The IACC's one, ASIP's another one. The brilliant, call it 3D chess or whatever, but this doctor that stopped the ASIP panel from meeting to discuss vaccine safety. Well, I can issue a letter to Secretary Kennedy and say, hey, you've got 2 weeks to rewrite the charter of the ASIP committee. So rather than just fight this in the court of law, why don't you just change the charter? That's in your job description. He said, brilliant idea. So what does he do? He puts vaccine safety experts on, vaccine injury experts on it. I believe there's MAPS, which is now on there, which is a sort of a new criteria of medicine. It's much more integrated and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that these people see they have an alternative view to the standard that is just genetics. Because ACIP previously was solely like pharmaceutical industry insiders, people who manufactured vaccines. That's who was on the board
Mhm.
deciding what was safe and what could be recommended to go into your child, which is ludicrous. And if you look at that honestly, you just go, that does not smell right. And
Right.
now we're changing it, and it's slow, and there's a machine that we've got to fight against, and it will not be over quickly, but we have to keep fighting.
Yeah. And on that committee is Tracy Slepsevich, Autism Health. Shout out to Tracy. There is a conference here in San Diego next weekend that I will be at. Come hang out.
San Diego, discovered by the Germans in 1920. Is that accurate?
Yeah, sure.
And I believe San Diego is German for Wales. Never mind, I won't say that.
Let's talk about some of the medical conditions of autism and the myth around it's autism for life. You can't do anything to help your child.
Mm.
It's just you got diagnosed, deal with it, go to all the ABA therapy, speech therapy, OT, blah blah blah. But there are countless testimonials of parents that have gone down the biomedical journey and are actually making huge headway and healing. Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
Healing their kids of autism from who like it's a whole it's kind of like you got to throw every trick at it. You're not going to know what sticks. There could
Mm.
be neurologically focused chiropractic, it could be red light beds, it could be hyperbaric chambers, glutathione IVs, all the gamut. Have you gone down any of those roads with Lyric or?
So part of our grief journey was, for a while we checked out of investigating. So I've probably been out of the loop of healing for
Uh-huh.
probably the last 3 4 years, and then over the last year have begun to reopen our capacity to investigate these sorts of things. Of course, you never stop trying to bring your child peace, but all I can do is rely on the stories that I hear. And I absolutely believe that autism is biomedical, and it can be treated when you address the underlying issues. But
Yeah,
that gets stifled because it's then counter to the narrative that autism is solely genetic.
right.
I'm just going back through the comments here. Liv from Praying Through Autism, she says she has a cousin with profound autism, and with him, an infection crossed his blood-brain barrier while in utero. So again, that's not a vaccination. That's it happen. That's the toxic exposures of a pregnant mother. That it, life is such a fragile thing, and I think like the brain, if it's like a microchip, like a microprocessor, you get a tiny little bit of moisture on it. What happens? Sometimes you get a spark and you're like hyper focused in this area and like, oh, autism's a superpower. Look what I can do that no one else can do. Sometimes you get absolutely too much moisture and the circuit just completely catches fire or fizzles out or stops working or turns off and on, off and on, off and on, because there's so many factors that can contribute. And I think that's a helpful way to see the brain, like brain blood barrier. What in the world's getting across that? How is that even possible? All of this is reasons why we need more medical research.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say, or do you think social media helps awareness or creates unrealistic expectations?
Depends on how you go about it, I suppose.
Depends on who
Ultimately, I
you're
think
following.
it's real people sharing real stories and inviting you to do your own research. I think it's been great for me. It's been very helpful for me. Um, my mental health, on the other hand, because I'm in the autism world a lot, Facebook and Instagram will suggest posts for you, and the algorithm doesn't know what I'm all about because it'll suggest like, oh, I have autism, like a group. called "Oh, That Was My Autism," and it's just full of people looking back on their life, going, "Oh, that's the reason I did that 40 years ago," and I've made it through life, had kids, got married, held down a job, and didn't know I was autistic. Okay, that's not autism.
That is not, no.
By the letter of the DSM-5, yes, but hopefully by the letter of the DSM-6, no, it's not. Or we have a different diagnostic category for that, or that profound is put into its own diagnostic category so we can have appropriate advocacy.
Yeah, do you think that'll ever happen?
Yes,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yes,
It's
yes, I do.
interesting too. When I was in the credential program to become a teacher, we were trained to never call anybody autistic. We were trained to say individual with autism. And it shifted
Mm.
of late to not saying an individual with autism, but that they're autistic. And it's shifted into this whole identity. This is my identity. I
Yes.
am autistic. Do you see that in Australia also?
Oh yeah, and we come up with even greater words for it. Neurospicy, neurosparkly. We do whatever we can to avoid the pain that comes with identifying with a disorder. We want to reframe it. So when I was writing my book, I was curious as to whether or not to capitalize autism, and so I'm just pulling it up now. I had a little look, um, because the internet kept wanting me to capitalize it. So so I just put it into ChatGPT. It's the first thing you'll see of should I capitalize the word autism is this AI generated summary that says generally autism is not capitalized as it's a disorder, but many in the autistic community and some organizations capitalize autism to signify it as a distinct identity, culture, or way of being, similar to how deaf is capitalized for cultural identity, making it a matter of personal preference and respect for neurodiversity. Identity first language, capitalize autism and autistic to reflect that it's integral to a person's being, not just a medical label. And I think that highlights the problem. We don't know what to do with it, so we embrace it so fully that it becomes our identity. And AUDHD, autistic, it goes in people's bios because they're proud of it. And I don't ever want my advocacy to take that away from people, but how do you create awareness that most people, like 25% of people, are profoundly affected, and they're not happy that they have it, and
Hmm.
it's not. It's a disorder we wish we never knew, but people gravitate towards the sanitization because it makes us feel good, and we put it in our bios, and we identify with it first because of very successful marketing, in my opinion.
Yes.
And it's reminiscent of big tobaccos in the 1940s, like the campaign that Camel did. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. It's like that's great marketing. It really is. It keeps people from asking the question or creates doubt, sows doubt into the correlation between smoking and lung cancer. So it's all money and marketing and power structures controlling the conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think conversations like this help advocacy. The more stories we can get out there, the more people will be heard. Let's talk about your book, The Missing Lyrics,
The
plural,
missing lyrics.
lyrics,
Um,
which is your
yeah,
son's name, Lyric. And we
yeah.
all we all know you as witty and philosophical, so I'm sure that was by design. Um, what's some of the mindset behind the book, and what's your goal with it?
Well, quickly on the title, I didn't want to call it that because it felt cheap and too easy, and it didn't have to be witty to come up with it. I'd actually titled the book something a lot heavier, and it was more medical. I'd actually titled the book Social Adjuvant because I'd made this correlation between adjuvants, which are in vaccines, are meant to stimulate an immune response from your body.
Mm,
And I saw my advocacy as I wanted to stimulate a response from society's immune system, if you will. So I saw myself as being a social adjuvant, and adjuvants can produce adverse effects, which my advocacy has done because I tell the truth. And but I was advised very, very wisely, and I'm so glad I listened to him by a gentleman by the name of Toby Rogers, who actually wrote an endorsement for my book. He said, "Mate, I love the book, but you can't use that analogy. It's an unredeemable. Adjuvants are one of the main reasons we're in this mess, and you should run as far away from that parallel as you can." And I was heartbroken because I loved it and thought it was witty and clever, but it was the right choice to change the title to The Missing Lyrics because yes, that's my son's name. His voice has gone missing, and he's not alone. There are many that share the same story. So the idea behind the book is just that I tell our story truthfully. I unpack the stages of grief. On my Instagram, it's the Instagram I've had forever, which is why it's Tyler Hudson Music. I didn't start this channel to to do autism awareness. I'm just a dad living life, and I just used the platforms that I had. You can go back through my Instagram and see Lyric as a baby. Like, it's this is just our life, and I just want to share it because you can go back through those Instagram posts and see the stages of grief I was going through. So, social media and Facebook memories are often the most embarrassing thing in an adult's life. Like, oh my God, I said that. Yes, yes, I did. But it's all milestones on our journey of what the process was like for us. And now that I'm through to the end and I have arrived at the acceptance stage, you can look back clearly and see, that's why I thought that way. That's why I hung on to autism as a superpower. That's why I told myself that this was all a divine orchestration from God for XYZ, because I was grieving. But now that my son's an adult and I've had to accept the reality of it and what that looks like for us, I just all of this burning inside me, and I just had to get it out onto paper. And the reality is, I wrote the book for my girls, and if people read it, great. If not, that's cool too. A lot of people won't like it, and that's. I'm not selling it to make money. I'm selling it to share the story and maybe help families and especially dads that are in a similar journey feel like they're not alone. Because I want to contribute to helping society heal from this, which means accepting where we're at, no longer denying that we have a problem, and moving into a better future for our kids.
Yeah, I think it's gonna sell, and I got a peek at that first chapter, and it's awesome. I love the movie parallels are just they're money.
Yes. So my son speaks with echolalia. He doesn't have a lot of functional language, and 9 times out of 10, if he's going to talk to you, it's in a movie quote, or he'll act out something from a movie. So you have to be well versed in movies to communicate with my son. So the book's full of movie quotes.
Yeah.
And it was a cathartic process writing it, and it served its purpose in that. So if other people read it, cool. And it'll be hoping to release it in May, June. I'm waiting on some promotional stuff potentially happening in the States, which I'll announce later. But I'll have there's a free sample available on my website if anybody wants to read the intro and first chapter. You have to go to www.tylerhudsonmusic.com and scroll to the advocacy page, and you'll find it.
And it'll be sold everywhere.
It's going to
Amazon.
be sold on Amazon, so therefore it is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just
That's
going through
awesome.
these comments, and I just want to see if there's any questions we should hop on before we pull the pin here. Um,
Yeah,
sorry, team. I haven't been checking the chat.
I don't see no chat on mine.
Oh, you don't see any.
I don't see one. But I
Touch,
see I got a few
touch the
in
screen.
I got a few in messages. How can a diagnosis actually help a child rather than limit them?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, from an educator's point of view, depending on where you're at, the school system works off of funding, so you can't get funding unless you have a diagnosis, and then that funding will then release a learning support aid to come alongside your child and make it not so chaotic in the classroom. My son has always had funding, and he's always had an aide. And I can't. It would have been impossible for him to be in a school setting without an aide. But for many kids that are more lightly affected, especially those dads that just want to refuse to admit that there's a problem, get look. There's no shame in getting a diagnosis because it can, even if it's just for the funding that you need to help your child not fall behind. If it's available, I say use it and don't shirk getting labeled. I literally label my son. He has a pin-on badge that says "I have autism. Please be patient." So we're embracing the label.
Yeah, for sure. I see the comments now.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Roll Up Ritz says Mercury Rising is on the watch list. Look, it's not a fantastic movie. It was just my first reference for autism. Oh, there's my wife. Love, my
oh,
doctor's first question was, "What's his superpower?" Yeah, and that's evidence of people push back on my comment that we're being trained to celebrate autism. But when you get questions like that, "Oh, your child's autistic? What's a superpower?" They've been conditioned to see it as a blessing. And this is general society now. And that's the sanitization I'm talking about. People automatically gravitate towards what can he do that no one else can do? Looking on the bright side rather than, oh man, what debilitating struggles does he face and how can we help? We just want to talk about, oh, does he telepathic?
right. This is a question here. My son, age 42, wants to know why he has autism. How do I explain that to him with the brain of a 6-year-old?
Mm,
Ooh.
yeah. There's obviously no one size fits all. And you would have heard this term, presuming competence, that he has the brain of a 6-year-old. That's what you see because that's how it manifests, and I totally get that. I say the same thing about Lyric, but reality is we just don't know how capable his mental capacity is. And I know that when I speak to my son, everything gets in, but nothing gets out. So I don't have an answer for that. I think it's an individual basis. Um, if he can ask why he has autism, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
And that he's aware of that, and 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 this is part of the advocacy problem is you don't want to cause someone grief. Autism as a superpower is actually probably a helpful picture for a child. Um, but then when you're inviting parents to take that same narrative, it can actually be counterintuitive because you're not urgently seeking ways to assist your child. So I think there probably is a distinction of how you talk about it with your child um, versus the reality of with which you process it as a parent. That's a great question. I'll have to do some thinking about that one.
I I know I'm kind of stumped. I don't know how you.
My first thought was, oh, well, tell him it's a superpower. I don't know.
My first thought is, well, you can spin
That
it.
checks out.
You can spin it as not a negative thing, but a positive thing, and then go down the whole um, mindset trail of how it's working for you and not against you. So
Mm,
then, so then he doesn't feel like a victim in the situation. But gee,
yeah.
that's a hard conversation because I mean, how do you
I always
comprehend
come
all that?
back to the wisdom of movies. And I put this in my book, Tombstone, Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp. Doc's on his deathbed. Wyatt keeps coming in to visit. And Doc says, "Wyatt, what do you want?" He says, "I just want to live a normal life." And Doc says, "There is no normal life, Wyatt. There's just life. Best get on with it." And I think the reality of not saying your child was made that way, but that this is just life for some people. And this is your life, and we want to assist you and help you as much as we can because we love you. And I think that's what I keep coming back to. I presume competence with my son, and I know I'm not going to get a response, but I will tell him to my level of a 43-year-old, I will talk to him like he's a peer. A couple times a day, I'll just say, "Man, I love you. I'm so proud of you. I love who you are."
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I know he's hearing it, but it's what he does with it. And the other thing I've done is to stop talking about him to others when he's sitting right there. It's really hard to break
Oh, yeah.
because you continue to think that he's not getting it, none of it's getting in. But then I think, how frustrating would it be for people to be talking about you and you can't say nothing about it?
Mhm.
And like, guys, I'm right here. Stop talking about me. Is that what he's thinking? Don't know. So I need to be more cautious about the words that do speak, talking about him when he's right there with me.
Yeah, I had a story of that in the classroom. One particular student would always hit one of my aides, and she would always talk about him in front of him. And I picked this up like after the 10th time, and I say, it's because you're talking about him in front of him. Do it again and watch, he's going to punch you. Sure enough,
Yeah.
he punched her. And like, how would it make you feel? And I think that's one of the biggest areas of advocacy too, just how we interact with autism in the real world,
Mm.
and it's just treat them normal, treat them
Yeah.
the same,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And there's
Everybody wants to be valued and accepted, and yes, we have to make concessions for people, and we should absolutely do that. And if that means you need to label your child to help, like I do mine, well, just do it. Whatever makes their journey in life easier.
yeah, it looks like there's a couple good books out there. Autism and the God Connection. So many books that explain My Different Brain is another book that could be used. Presumed competence, yeah. Well, that was a blast. Autism and the God Connection. Quick story on that. In my book, Special Days, I wrote about it. I had a student. Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Special Days. I had a student. We would go to the food bank at a church, and we would go organize all the food for everybody to come get it, whatever. And we went into the sanctuary with one of my students, and she was able to articulate her words. And I said, "Hey, so and so, can you?" I was just like, I don't know what I was thinking of or why I even asked the question, but I was just like, "Hey, this instructional aide goes to this church. Can you tell me where she sits in this sanctuary?" And there's like 500 chairs. She went to
Yeah.
the exact chair.
Wow.
And I'm
That's
like, oh, that is a trip. And then we follow her, we go sit down next to her, and she's like tripping out looking at the stage. And I'm like, hey, what do you see right now? What's going on? And she's like, there's angels and they're
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
At that moment, it was like I was an instructional aide. That was before I became a teacher. And I
Mm.
heard that, and I'm like, wow, man, these guys are
Yeah.
so much more intelligent than anybody thinks they are.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, geez, we've waffled on about an hour. You reckon we'll pull the pin?
Yeah, I think we should. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Make
thanks
sure.
everybody for joining. Roll up, Ritz. Your association with me and the UFC, I don't understand that.
I saw that. I don't know either.
Hillary, yes, Aaron is the greatest of all time. I totally agree. Tommy from Spectre and Camouflage had to put the kids to bed, and that's all good. And Anne, yes, Anna. Hopefully, we got to the answer to your question. We'll probably need some serious thought on that one, but thank you for your vulnerability in asking that question.
And will this be saved, posted? I think so. Does Instagram Live save these things?
I don't know. I was born last century, bro. I don't know how this works.
If it does save it, yes, I'll post it on my podcast.
I don't even think I shared this with my followers, so we're totally on your followers there, Zach.
I think it sends out an automatic.
Well, maybe it did the first time, but then when I had to get back in, I might have missed the opportunity to share it. But anyway, we'll find out.
We will find out.
Hey, this was fun. We should do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we get Tommy in here too.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, and let's get Jay Brad from Real Words with Sam. When
I
Jay Brad Britton chats, I feel like I'm just listening to an older brother, and I just want to shut up. stop talking and just listen. So he'd
You,
probably be a good balance to our shenanigans.
you know what's crazy about that is I'm recording with him on Tuesday,
Oh,
and I
nice.
purchased this book and I'm reading it,
Yeah,
and I know Sam. I volunteered at church, and he was in the class that I was volunteering. I'm like, what is going on?
that's wild.
I didn't even know they were local, but it'll be a lot of fun. That'll be coming out soon.
Yeah,
So
great.
is
Yeah,
that?
Real Words with Sam. Get that book, y'all. So good. If you're interested in the speller's journey, it's an unreal story.
Yeah, for sure. All right, y'all. Tyler.
Love y'all. I'm gonna